The information shared on Light Body Radio is for educational and informational purposes only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed healthcare provider, or qualified wellness practitioner with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or health goal. Dr. Lara May, her guests, and affiliates do not claim to cure, prevent, or treat any condition and are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are responsible for your own health decisions and that any actions you take based on the content are at your own discretion and risk. Thank you for tuning in to Light Body Radio.
Welcome to Light Body Radio, where science meets soul and healing gets multidimensional. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, functional medicine pharmacist, master intuitive Reiki channel, and certified life and health coach. Here we decode root causes, transmute stuck energy, and empower your full spectrum healing journey, body, mind, and light body. This isn't just wellness, it's awakening, grounded in science, guided by spirit, and designed for your evolution. Let's rise and radiate. Welcome to the next level of you. Hello and welcome back to Light Body Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Lara May. I'm a functional medicine pharmacist, life coach, intuitive healer, and your guide to living with more health, purpose, and alignment. Today, we are talking about something that sits underneath every healing journey, every wellness protocol, every spiritual practice, every relationship, every business, and every dream you have for your life. We're talking about self-work or self-coaching. And why do we do the self-work? Why do we journal? Why do we meditate? Why do we go to therapy? Why do we hire coaches? Why do we take courses, read the self-help books, attend retreats, and spend years trying to understand ourselves better? Why? And or why not? Maybe we have resistance to any one of those things that I just mentioned. But really, perhaps the deeper question is, what are we actually trying to accomplish with this self-work, quote unquote self-work? Because many people think self-improvement is about becoming a different person, or many people think self-improvement is selfish. But true self-work isn't about becoming someone else. It's actually about remembering who we've always been underneath that conditioning from society, the fear, the programming, the survival patterns that we've ingrained in ourselves just to get on to the next day. So today we're going to unpack what self-coaching really is, what self-work actually looks like, and why personal growth, personal challenging matters, and how this work can transform every area of your life. So what do you think the problem is that most people don't even realize that they have? Most people live their lives on autopilot, not because they're lazy or because they're unintelligent, but because the human brain is actually designed to automate, to be on autopilot. That is actually a survival mechanism. Our brain creates patterns, thought patterns, behavior patterns, emotional patterns, relationship patterns, money patterns, health patterns. I think you see where I'm going with this. And once those patterns are established, they run largely outside of our conscious awareness, unless we start to choose to evaluate and get curious and be conscious. But you wake up, most of us, we wake up and immediately begin thinking the same thoughts today as we did yesterday. Again, on autopilot, we're not even aware of that we're doing it. You react to stress the same way. You interpret situations through the same lens. You tell yourself the same stories, especially those ones that put you in the victim seat. Oh, this happened to me. Woe is me. And without even realizing it, your life becomes the accumulation of all of these unconscious habits, these unconscious stories. The challenge is that unconscious patterns create unconscious results. And if you don't examine your mind, you'll often find yourself living a life you've unintentionally created. How many of you out there have woken up one day and been like, how the hell did I get here? How in the world, or how in the F word, did my life turn into this? Or how is this my life? How did that happen? You probably wonder, why do I keep attracting these same types of destructive relationships? Or why do I keep sabotaging my goals and my dreams? Or why can't I maintain this healthy habit I'm trying to create for myself? Why do I feel stuck? Why am I exhausted all the time? Why do I never have any motivation? Why do I never feel good enough? The answers are rarely found in the external circumstances, believe it or not. That's where we like to put the blame, is on the external. But really, the answers are often found in this invisible operating system that runs underneath it all, but within us and from us. And that is where the self-work begins. So, why does change feel so damn hard? One of the biggest misconceptions people have about self-work is believing that if change is right for them, it should be easy or feel easy. But your brain is not designed to make you happy. Hello, should I say that again? Your brain is not designed to make you happy. Your brain is designed to keep you alive. That's all it cares about. And it will do that from a place of habit. Even if it's unpleasant, as long as it doesn't kill you, it's a habit and it'll keep doing that. It'll keep perpetuating it. So from your brain's perspective, familiar equals safe. Even if your current situation is stressful, which could ultimately kill you, right? We all know stress kills. Even if your habits are unhealthy and could ultimately lead to your demise and your death. Even if your relationships are dysfunctional and maybe even dangerous. Your brain knows how to survive there, so it will keep you there. The unknown, however, represents uncertainty. And uncertainty often gets interpreted as danger when it comes to your brain. And so this is why people can genuinely want to change, but at the same time simultaneously resist it. Part of them wants to grow. Part of them wants safety. So how do you have growth and safety at the same time, especially if you're asking your brain? So this internal conflict is completely normal. When you start setting boundaries, changing habits, speaking up for yourself, launching a business, ending a toxic relationship, stepping into a bigger version of yourself, whatever that looks like for you, your nervous system is going to respond with some sort of emotion that we would label as negative. So whether it's fear, anxiety, anything that will make you stop doing the new thing and stay with the old thing. And it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because you're doing something unfamiliar. The brain says, hey, let's just go back to what we know. It's fine over here. It's not that bad. Remember that old saying, go with what you know? That's your brain. But the higher part of you, the conscious part of you, this is the thing that makes us uniquely human, is our consciousness, our ability to question and reflect. That part of us says, hey, it's time to evolve. You can't stay here like this forever. This sucks. Let's try something new. Self-work teaches you how to feel the discomfort of growth without interpreting it as a sign to quit. Let's say that again too. It's okay to feel the discomfort of growth and not quit. Because discomfort is often not evidence that you're off track. It's actually more of evidence that you're on track. It's evidence that you're expanding beyond your old limitations. I mean, we could even take this down to an analogy of an athlete. How do athletes get better? They train harder, faster, under more stress because they know that that makes them better. It forces their body and their mind to change. That's why often athletes have more emotional and mental resilience because they're already used to pushing through hard things, pushing through something that's uncomfortable because they know on the other end there's something rewarding there. So, what is self-coaching? Self-coaching is the practice of observing your own mind instead of being controlled by it. So instead of letting your brain drive the train, you are choosing to step into that driver's seat. Your consciousness, your awareness is now stepping into the driver's seat. It's learning how to become both the thinker and the observer of your thoughts. Most people believe every thought that they think automatically. They don't even question them. But self-coaching teaches us to question those thoughts. I mean, even just the thought of that, especially like, let's say as a child, we're told something over and over and over again. We're just taught to believe it. And we're often actually taught not to question it. And so the concept of questioning our own thoughts can actually be pretty jolting and life-changing just in and of itself. So you might think, I'll never figure this out. Or maybe it's, I'm bad at math, something like that. And most people just stop there because that thought feels true to them or feels true to you. But self-coaching asks, what is actually true? What evidence do we have to support that thought? What evidence do we have to contradict that thought? How does this thought make me feel? That's a big one. Even just thinking about that our thoughts create our feelings, that's big, huge. Again, it puts us in the driver's seat and not just the passenger. How do I behave when I believe this thought? What might be a more useful perspective? So, contrary to popular belief, the goal for self-work, for self-coaching, is not constant positive thinking. The goal is actually conscious thinking, or you could just call it deliberate questioning. Question yourself, question your own thoughts, question your own brain, your own mind. Questions are good, questions are healthy. Ask more questions. Self-coaching creates space between stimulus and response. So usually, again, if we're on autopilot, we're having unconscious thoughts, which means we're having unconscious feelings, which means we're having unconscious actions and then unconscious results. And it's just going boom, 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 one after the other without a pause, without a break, without a stop. But self-coaching actually creates space between each of those steps, between the thought and the feeling, between the feeling and the action, and between the action and the result. And so instead of reacting automatically, you actually give yourself the chance to respond with intentionality, with intention, with awareness. Again, you get to stop being a passenger and become the driver. So one of the tools that I love and that I use is something I learned from the Life Coach School platform. And I am a certified life coach school life coach. The teacher is Brooke Castillo, and the tool is called the model. And the model explains how our experience of life is created. Circumstances create our thoughts. And let's be clear here, a circumstance is something factual. It is not an opinion, and it is not a whole bunch of story. It is just something simple and factual that you can say, yes, this is a circumstance. It cannot be disputed. It is what it is. And you put it there without judgment. Circumstances create thoughts. Thoughts create our feelings. Feelings drive our actions, and actions create our results. And most people spend their lives trying and trying and trying to change circumstances. Like, if my spouse changed, then I would feel better. Or if I lost the weight, then I would feel more confident. If my boss appreciated me, then I would feel valued. If my labs were normal, then I would feel at peace. But the model teaches us something pretty profound, actually, is that the circumstance itself is not creating our emotional experience at all. It actually has nothing to do with our emotional experience. It's our thoughts about the circumstance that create our emotional experience, because our thoughts create our feelings. And those thoughts that we're thinking about that circumstance is what's creating our feelings and our emotional experience. So imagine two people standing in the rain. One person thinks, this is miserable. This sucks. I hate the rain. The other person thinks, oh, this is beautiful. It smells so good. Oh, I love the rain. Same rain, same circumstance. The circumstance is just, I'm standing in the rain, two people standing in the rain, but they each had different thoughts. And so they each have different feelings and different experiences about the same rain. And this doesn't mean that circumstances don't matter. It just means that we have more influence than we actually realize, that we gave ourselves credit for. So when we become aware of our thoughts, we begin to understand why we're feeling what we're feeling. And once we understand that, then we can consciously create new thoughts, new feelings, new actions, new results, new outcomes, new life experience. So the goal is not to force positive thinking or positive thoughts. The goal is to become aware of the thoughts creating our reality, because awareness is where the freedom begins. I've always said the first step to any change is the awareness that you want the change, that you need the change. So I want to share a little personal example here, because this concept and using this tool really did change my life. And years ago, I worked for a boss who was genuinely toxic. He was a harasser on multiple levels. He was an abuser on multiple levels of multiple people. It wasn't just me, but I was one of the many in the department that were, how do we say, the disposal of his mood and what he was going to dish out. So every day, and this was way early on in my spiritual journey and my self-help, is actually this experience is what drove me into more spirituality and self-help, because it was so toxic and so uncomfortable. And so every day I would anticipate the criticism or anticipate the inappropriate jokes or inappropriate sayings. I would expect conflict, and I would replay these conversations in my head long after they had concluded. And if you had asked me at the time why I felt stressed, why I felt unhappy at work, I would have with confidence said, because of my boss. I would have laid blame to him. The circumstance seemed obvious. The circumstance was my boss. But then I learned the model, and through my coaching training and my self-coaching, I was forced to look at the situation differently. And my coach asked me, is your boss creating your feelings? Are you really giving him that much power? You're letting your boss choose how you feel? And at first, the autopilot me said yes, because that's what most of us do. That's what most of us believe. We put our power and we give it away into external things. We don't keep it within ourselves and our own autonomy. And we believe other people create our emotions. But when I really started examining my thoughts, I discovered something fascinating, that the circumstance wasn't actually my boss is terrible. That's actually the thought. The thought is my boss is terrible. The circumstance was simply my boss's behavior And everything else beyond the behavior was my interpretation of it. So a lot of my thoughts sounded something like, this shouldn't be happening, or he shouldn't treat us this way, or how long can I handle this? How much of this should I be expected to take? Or this is ruining my career. This is ruining my life. And those thoughts created feelings of anger, resentment, powerlessness, stress, and the list goes on. And I want to be clear, because the coaching didn't magically turn my boss into a wonderful person. Actually, just the contrary. He never changed. But what did change was me and some of my coworkers, that when we would get together, we'd talk about it, and then we would talk about, what are we going to do? Well, if we can't control him, what can we control? We control us. So I began to notice my thoughts. I stopped arguing with the reality of what was. I stopped handing over my emotional power to something outside of myself. And I stopped making someone else responsible for my own peace. And the most amazing thing happened. I became free. And not because my environment changed, because it didn't. I continued to work there for over a decade, and I still do. But it was my relationship with my environment. It was my thoughts about my environment. That experience taught me one of the most important lessons of my entire life, that the greatest source of suffering isn't always the circumstance. It's most of the time the story that we're telling about our circumstances. And once we learn to question our stories, everything else starts to shift. And just as a little aside, eventually that boss got removed. And so I credit that with the group of us that were able to raise our vibration, and we were able to rise above the toxicity. And because there were enough of us there that were determined to come into work every day in light and love and not let his toxicity affect us and the department, eventually his vibration, his presence was removed. So there, that's the end of that story. But okay, so now let's move on. The reason self-worth matters is because every experience in your life passes through your mind. Every relationship, every conversation, every challenge, every opportunity, every health journey, every success, every disappointment. Two people can experience the exact same event and have two completely different experiences because of their interpretation. Their interpretations are different. So your thoughts create meaning. Meaning creates emotion. Emotion drives your behavior, and behavior creates your results. This is why two people can receive the same diagnosis, and one becomes empowered and the other becomes defeated. Same circumstance, different interpretation, different outcome. The work isn't controlling your life. The work is learning how to manage your relationship with life, your thoughts about your life. So people often ask me, how does coaching and self-coaching differ from therapy and counseling? And I say, like, each one has its own separate but important purpose. Therapy often focuses on understanding trauma, processing emotional wounds, creating safety, building emotional resilience. Counseling frequently provides guidance, support, education, and strategies for navigating challenges. Coaching tends to focus on the present and sometimes the future. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? What's getting in the way? What beliefs are creating your current results? What would you need to think, feel, and do differently to create a different outcome? They're not competing approaches. They're all complementary. Sometimes people need therapy. Sometimes people need coaching. Sometimes they need both. I will tell you, I utilize both. I love both. And self-coaching really can become the daily practice that helps you bridge the gap between your sessions. And that's really where the transformation occurs. And it's what allows transformation to become, and miracles to become, part of your everyday life, rather than something that only happens in a coaching session or in a therapist's office. So just keep that in mind, that it's not one or the other. It's a yes and it's just a matter of where are you and what do you need for your life, for your success, for your happiness, for your well-being. So let's talk a little bit about how this ethereal thing, this non-physical thing of coaching, can affect your physicality, your actual biology. The body listens to the mind. That's scientifically proven. It's called epigenetics. Not in just the simplistic, just think positive way, because we already established this isn't about just always thinking positive. But biologically, every thought has its own chemistry, and every emotion creates its own physiology. When we're chronically stressed, fearful, overwhelmed, resentful, constantly running catastrophic thought patterns, how does your nervous system respond? You know the answer to this. Cortisol rises, inflammation increases, blood sugar becomes dysregulated, sleep suffers, recovery slows, digestion weakens, hormones shift, the body enters survival mode. And many people spend years and years and years trying to heal physiology while continuing to run the same mental and emotional programs that actually created the dysfunction in the first place. So we can't separate our mind from our body. They are one. They are part of the same system. And healing requires addressing both. And as a functional medicine practitioner, I've seen firsthand how closely connected the mind and the body are. But one of the most powerful lessons came through my own healing journey. And there was a period in my life where I was dealing with significant burnout and adrenal dysfunction. I was perpetually exhausted. My energy was depleted. I was constantly pushing, constantly striving, constantly feeling like I needed to do more, constantly living off caffeine, essentially. And I, of course, approached it the way many high achievers do. I looked for the perfect supplement, the perfect protocol, the perfect lab test to tell me what was wrong. And don't get me wrong, those are all tools. They're valuable tools. And functional medicine did play a huge role in my healing. But what I eventually discovered was that my physiology was responding to the way I was living. I was living directly as a result of the way I was thinking. I was living in a constant state of pressure, and I had been for decades. And I was carrying thoughts like, I'm behind, I can do more, I need to do more, I don't have time to slow down, I'll rest when everything's finished. And the truth is, everything is never finished. My nervous system was hearing those messages all day long, and my body believed it. My body believed it was in a perpetual state of emergency all day, every day. And the fascinating thing is that I would meditate and I would take all the right supplements. I went gluten and dairy free. I did intermittent fasting. I cycled on and off keto. I was exercising regularly, actually probably too much. And I would still spend the rest of the day running stress-producing thoughts, unconsciously, unaware that I was doing it. But through coaching and other spiritual practices, I actually began to identify the mental patterns that were driving this physiology of imbalance, this physiology of inflammation. And I started noticing that I was creating the pressure on myself, and it didn't need to even exist. I finally started challenging the beliefs that I had long been taught and kept on thinking that weren't even mine, about productivity, achievement, worthiness, and even rest. I learned that slowing down wasn't actually weakness, it was healing. I learned that rest wasn't laziness, it was healing. I learned that My value wasn't determined by how much I accomplished. What a novel concept. And as my internal environment began to shift, so followed my physical healing, which accelerated. And again, it wasn't coaching instead of functional medicine. It wasn't either or. It was the coaching plus the functional medicine. It was the mind with the body working together. And that's why I believe and I teach and I talk about how healing is multidimensional. It's not one dimensional. It's not one thing. It's not one aspect. It's not one protocol. It's multiple dimensional. It's all the things. We can't fully heal the body while ignoring our beliefs and our thought patterns and our emotional stressors, because that's what created the imbalance to begin with. And so above and beyond anything else today, I want to talk about how self-work is not self-fixing, because even within that belief or label that we put in the self-help world, that we need something to be fixed, that automatically sort of determines it or assigns something is broken. And so this is where a lot of people get stuck. They believe self-improvement means that there's something wrong with them. So they spend years and years trying to fix themselves, and I'm using air quotes. They need to fix their personality or fix their emotions or fix their imperfections, fix their weaknesses. But self-work isn't about fixing. It's about awareness. You are not a project to be repaired. You are a human being learning how to be more conscious. Focus. See how I emphasize the being, the beingness? We are beings. We're human beings. We're not human doings. The goal is not perfection. The goal is not overachievement. The goal is presence. The goal is understanding. The goal is compassion, self-compassion, compassion for others, forgiveness, self-forgiveness, non-judgment. That's a big one. That's a big goal. The goal is growth. And so one of the greatest paradoxes in the personal development field and journey is that real transformation happens when self-improvement and self-acceptance can coexist. Self-improvement says, I want to grow, and that's a goal. I want to grow. I want to go through growth process. But self-acceptance says, I am worthy right now just the way I am. And that I can want to grow, but also accept myself for who and how I am right now. And that will equate to an even bigger growth pattern and growth experience down the road. You have to have both. You need both. You can't, without growth, you stagnate. Without acceptance, you will suffer. Just think about all the different things that we are not willing to accept and how much discomfort and negativity that creates in our life. The healthiest people that I know and that I see and that I witness are not trying to become worthy because they know they already are. We're born worthy. That is our birthright. They are growing because they are already believe that they are. And that is a very different energy. It's a very different approach. So what does self-work practice actually look like? Well, of course, it's different for everyone. What works for you? What resonates with you? Many people imagine self-work as hours and hours of journaling, meditation, retreats, reading books, and blah, blah, blah. And you can do all those things, and all those things are great. But it also doesn't have to be that. It can be short, powerful practices. It can be a short model once in the morning, just doing a thought download, not even a model, just getting your thoughts out on paper. Self-work can be surprisingly simple. And usually the more simple it is, the more powerful it is. So let's maybe talk about or think about 5 minutes of intentional reflection, 5 minutes of just sitting with your eyes closed, listening and observing your breath. Can you sit for 5 minutes and do nothing but observe your breath? I love it. It's one of my most favorite things, but damn, when I first started, it was hard. And most people do find it really challenging at the beginning. Something simple, but not so easy at the beginning. So maybe meditation, prayer, breath work, journaling, morning pages, or again, thought downloads, being out in nature, just walking in nature, breathing, observing the wind, the songbirds, the temperature of the day, maybe noticing your emotional triggers. So this is something you can take out with you to the rest of your day. When and how do you get triggered? Just notice, give yourself that space of awareness. From there, maybe you start questioning, why? Why did this trigger me? What was it? What was I thinking about it that triggered me? Maybe it's a gratitude practice or appreciation practice. Above all, I feel like it should be taking responsibility for our reactions, our feelings, our thoughts, our actions, our results. Radical responsibility, radical honesty. Again, not with judgment, not beating up on yourself, but responsibility for your side of the street. How are you showing up? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? How are you acting? How are you reacting? And what are your results from that? That's all your responsibility. It's all within your realm of power. So again, start asking yourself on a regular basis, what am I feeling today? What am I feeling right now? What am I believing? What was I thinking that created that feeling? What story am I telling myself? Is that story serving me? I mean, and we can take this as something really polarizing. Think about something in the political realm that really fires you up and pisses you off. Ask yourself, what's your story about that? And then ask yourself, is that story serving me? Because I can almost guarantee you that it's not. And it's probably not even true, especially if it's a story you took in from the mainstream media. So it's important to question. What did I say at the beginning? Question, question, question. Always ask questions. So this practice isn't about doing more. It's actually about becoming more aware. So there's essentially 4 pillars to self-work. And so if you're wanting to build a self-work practice from scratch, you can just start here. Number 1 is awareness, learning to observe your thoughts, your emotions, and behaviors. Number 2 is responsibility, recognizing where you have influence and ownership and agency. Number 3 is compassion, treating yourself and others with the same kindness you would offer to someone you love. Number 4 is intentional growth, choosing thoughts, choosing habits and behaviors that move you toward the life that you want because you chose them intentionally. Awareness without responsibility becomes victimhood. Responsibility without compassion becomes self-judgment. Compassion without growth becomes stagnation. And growth without awareness just becomes a performance. So we need all 4, but it's ultimately how we implement and how you use them all together. I want to talk about this concept of spiritual bypassing because I think it's extremely relevant in this age and time. So there's an important distinction that we need to make. Self-work is not the same thing as spiritual bypassing. And you might even ask, well, what is spiritual bypassing? Spiritual bypassing happens when we use spiritual concepts to avoid dealing with reality or even avoid dealing with our shadow, the shadow aspect of ourselves. And so we might say, everything happens for a reason, or it's all light and love, or I should just raise my vibration, while we are secretly trying to avoid grief, anger, fear, disappointment, or pain. Because let's be real, we live on planet Earth. It's not all love and light. It's not like that by design. It's actually designed to be 50-50. It's designed to be 50% light and 50% dark. It's designed to be 50% yes and 50% no. It's designed to be 50% joyful and 50% sad or despair or anger, whatever, any of the negative emotions. So true healing and the self-work does not skip the hard or the negative emotions. It actually teaches us to experience them fully and let them move through us so that we can transmute them and transform them and move forward and move on to something else. So the real self-work isn't pretending that you don't feel hurt. It's allowing yourself to feel hurt without becoming trapped in how that hurt plays out in your life. It's sitting with the uncomfortable emotions long enough to learn what they're trying to teach you. Why are they showing up for you? They are messengers. We need to learn how to listen to them instead of avoiding them at all costs. So the goal isn't actually to transcend our humanity. Our goal is to actually fully embody it. We incarnated as humans on planet Earth at this time for a reason. And it wasn't to bypass it. It was actually to dive in, wallow in it, and then stand up and wash the mud off and keep going forward. The most spiritually mature people and teachers that I learn from and that I follow are not avoiding the difficult. They are not avoiding the difficult emotions. They are the ones who have learned to sit compassionately with themselves and with all the emotions, both the joy and the grief, both the love and the fear, the confidence and the uncertainty. Self-work asks us to bring awareness to every part of and every aspect of ourselves, not just the parts we like to keep, not just the parts we like to show other people because they're pretty and shiny. Those shadow aspects that we don't like to show and with people that we have. So why do we keep doing the work? If it's not all sunshine and rainbows, if it's not all love and light, then why do we keep doing it? When does it end? When do we come to a conclusion? And the one thing that I have learned through my own journey is that every time we think we've come to an end or a learning point about something, there's always a next level. So the work never ends, and that's not a bad thing. It's actually really great because that just means we keep evolving, we keep learning, we keep having really rich and wonderful experiences. So the work that you need to do in your 20s is not the same work that you need to do in your 30s, and it's not the same work that you'll need to do in your 40s, 50s, etc. It's different again and again and again and now. And so you might have a season of learning about confidence. You might have a season about learning to heal your burnout. You might have a season about learning about setting boundaries or learning to trust or love again. And then you might have a season of learning to surrender and let go or learning leadership and authenticity. Each chapter requires a different version of yourself. And that is what I've learned. That is the growth of the journey. And it's not a destination, that there isn't a finish line. And then when we suddenly arrive, everything will be fully enlightened or completely free of challenges and fully healed. But along the way, we become more resilient. We become more compassionate. We are more connected to ourselves and others. And the goal isn't perfection. And what a relief that is. The goal is expansion. The goal is becoming more of who we truly are and learning who that is along the way. And that's why the work continues and never ends, because we are not broken, because we are alive. And every season of life asks something new from us. The version of who you navigated earlier in life, teens, 20s, 30s, you needed all that so that you would be prepared for the next phase, or whatever that means for you, 40s, 50s, 60s. The version of you that created a career may not be the version of you who builds a meaningful relationship. And that's okay. Or maybe it's not okay for you. That's up for you to decide, for you to define, for you to decide what it means. Growth is lifelong, and wisdom expands, capacity increases. The work continues because life continues. So this has turned out to be kind of a long episode, but if there's one thing I hope you take away from today's episode is that the purpose of self-work, of self-coaching, is not to become perfect. It's not to become endlessly productive, and it's really even not to become enlightened. The purpose of self-work is to become conscious of our thoughts, conscious of our patterns, conscious of our choices, conscious of the incredible creative power that we've had all along. Because the moment we become aware, we become conscious, then we get to reclaim our ability to choose. That's power. Every transformation begins with that single act of awareness, that choice to be aware. And the purpose of self-work is not to become someone else or become someone totally different. It's to become more fully yourself, who you are meant to be, who you have always been, that maybe you changed for somebody else over time. So more conscious, more intentional, more aligned, more connected to your truth. So the greatest gift self-coaching can offer is not more productivity. It's not even more success, or it's actually not even better health. Those are all beautiful side effects. But the best gift is the gift of freedom. Freedom from the automatic thinking, freedom from living on autopilot, freedom from limiting beliefs, freedom from unconscious patterns, freedom to choose who you want to become. And that kind of freedom changes everything. So I want to thank you for sticking with me today, especially if you stuck through with me all to the end. Again, today was a little longer than I expected, but thank you. And if this episode resonated with you, then I would appreciate it if you shared it with someone that you think might need to hear it or benefit from it. And remember that your healing is not found in becoming someone new. It's found in coming home to who you've always been. So until next time, we'll see you in the next episode, everybody. Thank you for joining me on Light Body Radio, where functional medicine meets intuitive healing and transformation happens on every level. If this episode resonated with you, please like, share, and if you're ready to go deeper, visit drlaramay.com to book a functional medicine consultation or an intuitive healing session. Whether you need to rebalance your body, clear your energetic blocks, or reconnect with your soul's purpose, I've got you. You can also follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Dr. Lara May for daily inspiration, energy updates, and healing tools. Remember, your healing is multidimensional, and so are you. Until next time, honor your body, trust your intuition, and activate your light.